Welcome into Out of Order, everyone. My name is Ben Mayer.
My name is Anthony Buono.
Today we're going to be talking about a pipeline between Russia and China and a deal that has stalled, which is really going to put Russia in a tough position.
This was Russia's lifeline trying to get their stuff out of their country.
This really was. So Russia is looking for a deal to export a ton of gas to China. And recently, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping met to try to talk about this a little bit. But it turns out China wants Russia's gas at heavily subsidized domestic level prices. Those prices are often around 20 to 25% of the price on the international market. Okay? They also only want a fraction of the pipeline's capacity, which means that very little income is going to be coming into Russia's state-owned Gazprom.
Russia was hoping that they could take all of the demand that was coming from Europe and put all that demand onto the Chinese market.
True.
They were hoping that China was going to be able to absorb all of that gas.
Yeah.
And what's happening is Xi Jinping, he sees Russia's weakness. He sees this, and he's like, we are going to use you for cheap gas, and we're not going to take all of it.
Absolutely.
So it's really showing a really big chasm between these two countries that the West kind of views in one singular block.
Yes. This is really showing that they're not that. And
Yes.
part of why this is so important for Russia is because Gazprom, which is its state-owned monopoly of producing natural gas, just reported its first loss since the 90s. And they suffered this, of course, because Europe stopped buying,
Of course.
which meant it lost $7 billion in 2023.
Jeez.
So that's a huge deal. And Russia's looking for any other customer that it can to sell its gas to. With Europe out of the fray, China's really the only game left in town, right?
Yep.
Because this gas needs to be transported over land as well. And they're trying to reroute the gas that they extract from the western part of Russia. As if you're looking around on the map, if you're not going west to Europe, you're surrounded by other extremely poor countries, and then you have China to your south. You have that one option. But the thing is, China doesn't even use that much natural gas as it is.
Right.
It's a very small amount of their energy generation mix. It's only about 8%.
Wow, I didn't know it was that small.
It is super small. And they've also been investing heavily in building out their own capacity, including investments of over $50 billion in 2022. China right now is really fully focused on complete economic independence.
Yeah.
They want energy independence. They want food independence. They want to be able to build all of their own technology so they can operate militarily without Western aid. And so that's going to play in here. Not to mention, they're expanding their renewables generation capacity much faster than anyone else in the world.
Way faster than anyone else in the world. And they have all the resources internally to make that happen.
Totally. So what do you think could happen next year?
Well, with Russia not being able to get their gas over into China, they have to find a new buyer,
Yes.
or they have to cut production.
Yes.
It has to be one or the other. Now, the problem with cutting production is once you cut production, it's actually very hard to get production going again.
Yes.
Once you stop production, it's very difficult to restart all those engines.
Yeah.
Especially because a lot of these natural gas pumps are old technology. That was built with Western technology.
Totally.
And Western engineers.
And knowledge, yes.
And now they don't have access to the Western engineers and the Western tech that they did when they were first putting these pumps in.
Yeah.
So their only real way to get them out of this economic trouble is to cut production, shrink their nation's GDP overall.
Yeah.
And accept a smaller economy because they've accepted that they don't want to be a part of fueling Western Europe by invading Ukraine.
Exactly. And the thing is, even if they do downscale their production, unemployment is going to spike, right?
yeah.
Because all of these workers at Gazprom, which is one of Russia's biggest companies, now have nothing to do. And Putin is already worried about domestic unrest, I think.
Of course.
Because when you've got a situation where you're sending tons of people off to war, a ton of them are dying, and the ones that come back are unhappy with how they're being treated because Russia doesn't really have the money to support them, you're getting yourself into a very sticky situation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think this is interesting, and more than anything, this shows that like Russia is the little brother. This is not an equal partnership.
No,
right?
no.
It is China is the hegemon, and Russia kind of has to kowtow to them. But China and they are not interested in charity.
No.
They only want to give Russia anything that helps them in return.
Yeah, China has no loyalty to Russia. This very much reminds me of the relationship between Hitler and Mussolini, where Mussolini was so obviously inferior to Germany in every single possible way, but still tried to play like they were on equal footing.
Yeah.
And it's also similar because Mussolini was around a decade before Hitler and everything, and Xi is very much rising in the 20th century, while Russia really has been going on this war path for a much longer time with the invasion of Georgia and everything.
Putin's been president for like 25 years
Exactly.
now.
So this has been, it's been a long time with him. And the fact that China, I wonder if this changes any course for Russia, because Russia was banking on this. And now that they see, oh man, we can't rely on China, what do we do now? I think this might cause more strains in their relationship. Even though China is still funneling weapons to Russia to fight in Ukraine.
Yes.
That's still happening.
Yes, they are. But Russia has to pay for all of that. And Russia's running out of income sources of their own. So I think this is tough. I think their only other option really is to try to raise taxes because they need income for the war.
Right.
They need to fund the war. China is already facing more pressure from the West for giving them weapons and for financing them. And so taxes are going to be the only other way he has to raise any revenue. But the problem, of course, is again the social unrest issue, right? Like it's going to make people's lives worse, and I think Putin fears that.
And we see that Russia's GDP numbers are going up and they're in the green this past year.
Yes.
But that's only because they're in a war economy.
Yes.
And when you're in a war economy, you're spending a lot of money, you're producing a lot of things, but it's not sustainable production, and it's not production that people genuinely see on the home front well, you know?
Totally.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Out of Order. If you like the content, please consider subscribing on YouTube and following us on Patreon, where we post exclusive content.
This week on Patreon, we're covering China cracking down on wealth flaunting on social media. We're also going to talk about Ukraine, which is now making strikes inside Russia with NATO equipment, including that from the U.S. And finally, we're going to be discussing Biden's new restriction on asylum for immigrants.
And our deep dive of the week, our exclusive video on Friday, is going to be about the shifting demographics in America, how people from liberal states are moving to conservative states, and what that means for elections in the future.